The inner voice. Listen to the voice of your heart, it will show you the right way. A person's will is often undecided, which proves that he is influenced by different spiritual forces which want to win him over for them. At this time the person must make a decision. He must not remain indecisive but ought to turn his will in one direction, and then he should pay attention to the inner voice which wants to advise him to use his will correctly. The more diligently he aspires to take the right path, the more clearly he will perceive this voice. Then it will warn him during temptations, it will strengthen his resistance, it will admonish him and always faithfully tell him if the person is in danger of wanting to take his own paths which don't entirely correspond to God's will. But it is almost imperceptibly faint in those who live their life unscrupulously, who care little about right and wrong. And frequently it will be silenced completely because the person fails to listen, and the gentle voice will be drowned out by the voice of the world. In that case, the human being will be in great danger. He must make his own decisions and is more likely to allow himself to be determined by ungodly forces, and he will act accordingly. A person with the will to live a good life, thus, to live according to God's will, is never left without spiritual guidance. He will be guided, his thoughts will be directed, i.e., although his freedom of will is not being curtailed, the thoughts will come so close to him that he has to accept them if he does not consciously reject them. And if he is weak-willed, the spiritual forces will try twice as hard to convey their thoughts to him, and he will merely need to listen within, i.e., the human being need only enter into a silent dialogue with himself, and he will be mentally clearly instructed as to what he should or shouldn't do. However, people often don't remain in this short contemplation. Their thoughts fly all over the place, one moment here, one moment there, and this results in indecision, in hesitation, both in regard to good as well as to evil. For this reason, you are admonished time and again to pay attention to the voice of the heart, so that you will act clearly and determinately and not digress from the right path. An indecisive resolve offers God's adversary an excellent target, for this is the start of his control over the former, and every temptation confronts the will with a decision to be for or against it. If, however, the person pays attention to his inner voice, he will not have to fight for long. He will resist the temptation, since he will be supported by the forces of light as soon as he pays attention to them and complies with their admonitions. Then he will also grow in strength, for his will entitles the beings of light to give him strength, whereas a lack of will prevents them from doing so. For no human being receives strength against his will, although the beings of light are concerned for the human being's soul with utmost love. Yet their activity is subject to divine law as well, which respects free will first and foremost. The inner voice, however, is only audible to someone who voluntarily listens within, and therefore it can never be considered coercion. It can be heard or ignored, it can be complied with but also disregarded, all depending on the person's will. It merely gently admonishes and warns the person, it assists the weak and guides the undecided. It will never push itself to the fore but will only be heard by someone who listens. But he will be guided correctly and able to live his life without worry, for if he complies with the voice of his heart, he will also know that he conducts himself correctly and lives in accordance with God's will. Amen.